Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to mismapasion, YouTube's premier channel about all things women's football. And with many teams wrapping up their qualifying ties for next year's major competitions like the Olympics, UEFA have taken a profound step in developing and furthering the advancements in women's football in Europe by not only introducing a new format for the Women's Champions League, but also introducing a brand new competition entirely, and both of these things will be in effect from the 2025-26 season onwards. Now, we will start off with the new Women's Champions League format, which is based on the still very controversial Swiss model that is going to be introduced in the men's game in the 24-25 season. So, how will this new format work? Well, firstly, it's important to highlight that it will no longer be 16, but now 18 teams will be competing in the UEFA Women's Champions League, with these teams being sorted into three different seeding pots based on their respective club coefficient rankings, which will determine their opposition in the initial stages of the competition. So, before we go any further, I just want to give you a quick disclaimer in case you may not be aware here. But UEFA's club and association coefficient rankings are basically a points-based system which is determined by a team's performances in European competition over the last 5 years. So, the farther a team goes, let's say for example, all the way to the final of the Women's Champions League, then the higher the points they earn, and those points will go towards the association as well, in addition to the points of other teams that come under the same association, to give the latter its own coefficient ranking. To exemplify this, let's take Barcelona, who in the last two seasons have reached the final of the Women's Champions League and even went as far as winning last season's competition. Barcelona will have a high coefficient ranking based on their performances, which in turn will also go towards boosting the coefficient of the association, aka the Royal Spanish Federation. Now, this is just a boiled down explanation of the coefficients, and if you want to know more or have just piqued your interest here, then I've linked the official explanation from UEFA themselves in the video description below, which you can definitely feel free to take a look at when this video is done, of course. Now, going back to the new Champions League format. Once these teams have been sorted via the coefficients, the top 4 teams will qualify for the quarterfinals automatically, whilst teams that rank 5 to 12 will enter into a 2-leg knockout tie to determine the remaining teams that will participate in the quarterfinals. The rest of the teams in the competition that are ranked below 12, well, unfortunately for them, they will be eliminated. And from the quarterfinals onward, the competition will resume as normal in terms of having 2-legged quarter and semifinals, which will eventually lead to the single-leg final, of course, determine the winner of the Women's Champions League for that particular season. Now, looking at the teams that will be participating in this new Champions League format is, of course, the winners themselves from the prior season, the league champions of the top 6 divisions, and the runners-up of the top 2 divisions will all automatically qualify for the league stage of this new Women's Champions League format. The remaining spots will now go to the 4 teams that qualify via the Champions qualifying path, whilst the last 5 spots will go to teams that qualify through the League qualifying path, aka how well they finish domestically. The 2 extra spots for the Women's Champions League have been opened up to the runner-up of the association rank number 17 and the third place team from the association rank number 7. In the event that there's a scenario like Barcelona's, there they are again, where they occupy 2 of the automatic positions, then the champions of the 7th placed association will get the automatic qualification in the vein of Chelsea this season, who are the current and reigning defending Women's Super League winners or holders in this case. They would have not automatically qualified for the Women's Champions League if Barcelona had failed to win the final. But obviously Barcelona won the final and Chelsea automatically qualified as a result of that. Now, to the Swiss model. Yes, it is highly controversial. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of it, especially since we collectively as humans, we really don't like drastic changes. If you're going to make any change whatsoever, you have to introduce it very slowly and over a long period of time so that people get used to it. But despite that, the new format of the Women's Champions League is overall a great initiative by UEFA, as, in my opinion, And from a general point of view, it promotes continental exposure of different competition and tactical disciplines that teams can learn from and adapt to, even to step up their own competitiveness, and which can also now in turn go on to improve the standards of their own respective domestic leagues, as teams will now be looking to qualify for the Champions League. And the only way to qualify against the previous teams that qualified is to step up your game. And I think this new format will definitely help to allow teams to step up their game, especially if they come from a low ranking association, and it even presents a lifeline for teams that have otherwise failed to feature in the season's competition. Looking at you, Arsenal, Wolfsburg, Juventus, the list will always go on. On the whole, though, it is a great advancement for women's football in Europe, which will undoubtedly lead to stronger competitions between teams as time goes by, especially with the introduction of the new continental competition here. Now, this new competition does not have an official name, but just for argument's sake, let's call it the Women's Europa League, just so that we can just put there as kind of a placeholder until we get the official name and announcement for this trophy or competition, better yet. Now, much like the new and improved Women's Champions League format, this new competition will provide teams that would otherwise have had a very unlikely opportunity in making it to the Champions League an opportunity to gain exposure on a continental level, which will help them grow and evolve into more competitive outfits as the years go by, like I've just explained less than a minute ago. Now, unlike the Women's Champions League, this new competition will only feature 13 teams that will consist of the third best teams of the associations ranked number 8 to 13, the teams eliminated in the second round of Women's Champions League qualification, and finally the second and third place teams from the first round of Women's Champions League qualification. So essentially, it's going to be a lifeline for some of these teams. And hearing this, I'm sure it sounds very weird that only 13 teams will compete in this competition, because you really can't call it a knockout when there's an odd number of teams, if we're being honest here. Unless that team that is without competition or opposition is receiving a bye into the final, which I'm sure is not the case, in that it's just simply a little bit of a weirdly worded bit of communication from UEFA, which hopefully will be clarified in due course as the days go by. Definitely does stink of a little bit of, I guess, mishandling or disorganization, but there's no need to be nitpicky about that kind of a situation. Nevertheless, though, the new competition being introduced by UEFA will be a knockout competition, of course, but this time it'll be right from the word go. So the very first game week, you're already playing in the first leg of a knockout game here with your opposition. And of course, it'll be 2 legs per round, which does put in a high sense of urgency and jeopardy right from the beginning, which will undoubtedly bring about a massive entertainment factor to this yet unnamed competition. But like we said, we'll just call it the Women's Europa League for now. The winners of this tournament will receive a bye into the second round of the following season's Women's Champions League qualifiers, which is better than nothing, I guess, but hopefully over time the reward can be upgraded to just grant the winners automatic qualifications in the Champions League, much like the Europa League already does in the men's game. Overall, looking at these advancements, UEFA have done a fantastic job in revamping and introducing their continental competitions for women's football. Admittedly, the expanded Champions League format is undeniably skewing towards catering towards the elite European teams that I alluded to earlier, like the likes of Arsenal, but if we're being honest, it's the big teams that bring the most eyes to the game, and their involvement will undeniably help to raise the profile of the Women's Champions League, which in turn will boost sponsorship and revenue over time, which will benefit all the teams involved in the Women's Champions League. And as for the new competition, I already outlined my sentiments toward it, and I really sincerely hope that UEFA give the winner an automatic spot in the Champions League sooner rather than later. But that is basically the outline and the biggest breaking news coming out of UEFA. If you'd like to know more about these developments by UEFA, I have also placed a link in the description for your perusal at your own leisure. And this is just really a very good advancement in women's football, at least on the European continent. Hopefully, other continents can look at this and say, wow, let's actually take this idea and just expand on it and make it even better, because at the end of the day, women's football in general benefits from this. So hopefully we get to see a lot of improvement as the time goes by. As always, please leave your thoughts about this topic in the comments. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.